You have been told that fear is a natural part of being human, that it is a necessary shield for your protection. I am here to tell you that this is the great deception of human life. Fear is not natural. It is the very symptom of a consciousness asleep to its own nature, dreaming of separation. It has no foundation in reality, no power of its own, save the power you grant it through your belief in it. There is a path out of this dream, a way of awakening that does not battle fear, but sees it vanish as the illusion it has always been. This is not a path of adding more knowledge or techniques, but one of a fundamental and radical shift in perception. What you are about to receive goes beyond the mind's understanding to the heart of true spiritual discernment, revealing the awakened path to a consciousness that is forever free from the shadow of fear. Consider for a moment the last time a wave of anxiety washed over you. Perhaps it was a sudden dread about a financial obligation, a cold knot of worry about a loved one's health, or a pervasive sense of inadequacy at your work. In that moment, the fear felt utterly real, undeniable, and powerful. It commanded your entire attention, dictating your mood, your thoughts, and even the physical sensations in your body. You believed you were in a relationship with a real external force, and you likely responded by either preparing for a fight, seeking to flee the situation, or freezing in apprehension. This entire drama, so familiar to human experience, is built upon one fundamental, unquestioned assumption that the fear is a natural and intelligent response to a threatening world. But what if this assumption is the primary error? What if the fear itself is the illusion and not the indicator of truth we have always believed it to be? This is the cornerstone of our exploration. That fear is not a natural part of your being, but a product of the unawakened mind. The unawakened mind is that aspect of consciousness which operates under the conviction of separation. It believes itself to be a solitary, fragile entity, a skin-encapsulated self, existing in a universe of other separate and often hostile objects and forces. From this standpoint of isolation, everything that is not you becomes a potential threat. Your job is not a field of expression, but a source of insecurity. Other people are not fellow beings, but competitors or judges. The future is not an unfolding mystery, but a gallery of potential disasters. The mind, in its sleeping state, constantly projects this narrative of a vulnerable self in a dangerous universe, and fear is the inevitable emotional soundtrack to this projection. It is the shadow cast by the belief in separation. Let us examine this more closely with a simple daily occurrence. You are walking down a dimly lit street at night, and you hear a sudden noise behind you. Instantly, your heart pounds, your muscles tense, and your mind races with images of potential danger. The unawakened mind interprets this entire sequence as proof of fear's validity. The noise was the cause, and the fear was the necessary protective effect. But look deeper. The noise itself was neutral. It could have been a cat, a falling branch, or indeed another person. The fear did not arise from the event, but from the mind's instantaneous interpretation of the event. It projected a story of threat onto a sensory impression. The fear was not a response to reality, but a reaction to its own projected narrative. This is the mechanism of the illusion. The power is not in the external world. The power is in the mind's capacity to believe its own misinterpretations. This is why all attempts to manage, conquer, or psychologically analyze fear from the level of the personal, separated mind are ultimately futile. They are like trying to smooth out the reflections in a disturbed pond by manipulating the reflections themselves. You might temporarily push one anxious thought down, but another will soon arise to take its place, because the source of the disturbance, the agitated water of the mind, believing in separation, remains untouched. You cannot solve the problem of fear while still accepting the basic premise of a vulnerable, separate self that needs to be afraid. This is the great labor of the spiritual journey. The awakening begins not with a battle, but with a profound and gentle discernment. It starts when you, in a moment of fear, pause and refuse to accept the narrative at face value. You turn your attention away from the object of the fear. The bill, the diagnosis, the critical comment, and you look instead at the fear itself. You inquire, what is this? You do not analyze it psychologically, tracing its roots to childhood. You look at it directly in the present moment as a phenomenon appearing in your awareness. You feel its texture, its weight, its pulsation, but you do not grant it the authority of truth-teller. You begin to see it not as your fear, but as fear, an impersonal cloud of energy that has appeared in the vast sky of your consciousness. As you practice this simple, radical looking, a miraculous shift occurs. You start to notice that the fear, which seemed so solid and all-encompassing, has no core. It is a constellation of physical sensations, a stream of frantic thoughts, and a powerful label, all arising within you, but they are not the essence of you. The real you is the aware space in which this entire drama is happening. The fear is the content, but you are the context. It is like watching a terrifying storm from the window of a quiet, sturdy house. The storm is real on its own level, but it cannot harm the fundamental structure of the house. You are that fundamental, unchanging awareness, not the passing weather of emotion. When this discernment dawns, the fear is not defeated, it is seen through. It loses its credibility and its power to define your reality. It may still arise out of ancient habit, but it can no longer hold you captive. For you have discovered yourself to be the very consciousness in which it appears and disappears, and not the fragile character in its story. Having seen that fear is an illusion born from the unawakened mind, we must now confront its most persuasive argument, the apparent reality of the threat itself. The world presents itself to our senses as a landscape filled with objects and events that are inherently dangerous. A critical word from a boss feels like a direct assault. A downturn in the market appears as a personal catastrophe. A pain in the body seems an omen of inevitable suffering. We are conditioned to believe that the power resides in these external things, that they possess an innate ability to harm us, and that our fear is merely the intelligent, proportionate response to their inherent threatening nature. This is the great deception we must now unravel, for until we see the impersonal nature of what appears as threat, we remain forever at the mercy of a world we perceive as hostile. The truth that liberates is this: nothing in the universe of form has any power of its own. Its power is only that which consciousness grants to it through the act of belief. Consider a simple piece of paper with the word fire written on it. That paper holds no heat. You can touch it without being burned. Yet, if you are in a crowded theater and someone shouts, "Fire!" that same concept, now injected into a believing consciousness, can create panic, injury, and stampede. The power was never in the word itself, but in the collective agreement about its meaning and the projected consequence. This is a precise analogy for every fear you experience. The critical email, the negative bank balance, the doctor's report, they are all like that piece of paper. They are neutral events, forms, and patterns of energy. They become threatening only when the mind, steeped in the belief of a separate, vulnerable self, projects a catastrophic future upon them, and then reacts to its own projection as if it were an established fact. Let us take this from the abstract into the raw material of daily life. You are driving to an important appointment and you encounter a traffic jam. The unawakened mind instantly personalizes the event. It is not merely a convergence of vehicles, it is a personal affront, a threat to your success, to your reputation, to your carefully laid plans. The frustration and anxiety that arise are not caused by the stationary cars, but by your mind's story about what those cars mean for you, the separate entity trying to protect its interests. The threat is not in the traffic, the threat is in the meaning you are assigning to it. Now, extend this principle to something more profound. You receive a diagnosis of an illness. The medical facts are what they are, an impersonal condition of the body. But the mind, in its separated state, instantly weaves a terrifying narrative of suffering, decline, and loss. It projects a future of pain and an end. And it is to this imagined future, this story, that you react with fear. The power is not in the condition, but in the terrifying movie your mind is now producing and starring you in as the victim. This is the core of the illusion. We are forever fighting shadows, reacting to ghosts of our own creation. We believe we are in a battle with the world, when in truth, we are only witnessing the echo of our own unexamined beliefs. The boss who criticizes you is not the source of your pain. The source is your own deeply held belief that your worth is dependent on his opinion. The fluctuating number in your bank account is not the source of your security. Your belief that it is the very source of your insecurity. When you believe you are a separate self, you must constantly seek validation, security, and safety from the outside world. And thus you grant that world total power over your inner state. You become a puppet, and the world holds all the strings. The awakening to the impersonal nature of threat is, therefore, the greatest empowerment. It is the moment you stop being a victim of circumstance and begin to recognize yourself as the source of all meaning. This is not a call to passivity or denial. It does not mean you should ignore a doctor's advice or drive recklessly through traffic. It means you engage with the forms of the world without being enslaved by the emotional reactions they seem to provoke. You see the traffic jam as traffic, not as a conspiracy against you. You see the diagnosis as a set of conditions to be addressed, not as a final verdict on your life. You begin to withdraw the power you have given to external things, and as you do, a profound quietness emerges. You start to perceive that the entire drama of life, with all its apparent threats and rewards, is playing out on a surface level. Beneath it, there is a depth of your own being that is untouched, unmoved, and inherently free. It is to this depth that we must now turn, for it is here that we discover the only reality there is. This recognition of the impersonal nature of threat brings us to the very precipice of a profound transition. For centuries, the spiritual seeker has been instructed to fight, to battle sin, to conquer desire, to overcome fear. This entire approach, however well-intentioned, is founded on the very error we are now exposing. It reinforces the central figure of the separate self, the I that must struggle and strive against an enemy. It creates a personal battleground within your own consciousness where one part of you, the good spiritual seeker, wars against another part, the bad, fearful self. This is a civil war that can never be won, for both the warrior and the enemy are phantoms born of the same misperception. To fight fear is to grant it reality. It is to accept the premise that there is something present that must be destroyed. The path out of this endless conflict is not a different kind of battle, but a complete abandonment of the battlefield itself. This is the shift from the personal battleground to spiritual discernment. It is a movement from doing to seeing, from struggle to understanding, from the level of the problem to the level of the solution. Spiritual discernment is not an intellectual analysis. It is a faculty of pure knowing that operates when the clamor of the personal self subsides. It is the capacity to look at the constellation of sensations, thoughts, and emotions you have labeled fear, and to realize, with a clarity that bypasses the mind, this is not a power. This is not a truth. This is a phenomenon appearing to me, and I am that which witnesses it, untouched and unmoved. Imagine you are in a room that is completely dark, and you see a coiled shape in the corner. Your heart races, your body freezes. The personal self immediately goes to war with this threat, preparing to fight or flee. This is the battleground. But then someone turns on a light. In that instant of illumination, you see that the coiled shape is not a snake, but a simple rope. You do not then battle the rope. You do not need to conquer it or overcome it. The moment the light of understanding floods the room, the entire battle ceases because the misperception has been corrected. The fear vanishes not because you fought it, but because you saw the truth. Spiritual discernment is that light. It does not fight the darkness. It simply illuminates it, and the darkness, which never had any substance of its own, is seen to be non-existent. In your daily life, this translates into a revolutionary change in your relationship with your own inner experience. When the familiar tightening of anxiety arises before a public speech, the old way was to enter the battleground. You would try to suppress the nervousness, to talk yourself out of it, to breathe deeply, to control it. You were at war with your own being. The way of spiritual discernment is to simply become aware of the entire event without taking sides. You feel the flutter in the stomach. You notice the thought, I am going to fail, and you do not engage with any of it. You rest your attention not on the content of the fear, but on the aware, silent presence that is witnessing the fear. You are the room, not the furniture within it. You are the screen, not the movie playing upon it. This is not a passive state. It is the most active form of true spiritual work. It requires a gentle, unwavering vigilance. When a wave of anger towards a loved one surges, instead of being swept away by its narrative or fighting to repress it, you pause, you discern. You see the anger as an object in your consciousness. You notice its heat, its pressure, its compelling story of justification, but you do not buy the story. You do not become the angry person. You are the awareness that is knowing the anger. This simple shift in identity from the content of your experience to the context of awareness itself is the end of the personal battleground. The anger, deprived of the fuel of your identification, may still ripple for a moment, but it will lose its destructive power and dissipate like a wave collapsing on the shore. It was just energy, and you are the ocean. This is the gateway through which we must pass to discover the ground of all being, the very substance of our existence that forever remains unthreatened and whole. This shift from the battleground to the witness, from the personal struggle to impersonal discernment, is not merely a psychological technique. It is the necessary preparation for the ultimate realization that what you are, in your true and irreducible essence, is consciousness itself. This is not a philosophical concept to be debated, but a living reality to be apprehended. All that we have explored, the illusion of fear, the impersonal nature of threat, the futility of the personal battle, collapses into this one staggering truth. Consciousness is the only reality and the only substance. The world of form, including this very body you inhabit and the mind you believe yourself to be, does not exist independently. It has no standalone reality. It appears only within and is made of the one infinite and eternal field of consciousness. You are not in the world is in you. The tree you see outside your window, the sound of a distant siren, the feeling of the chair beneath you, these are not external objects contacting a separate you. They are modulations, forms, and movements appearing within the vast, aware space that you are. Just as a wave is not separate from the ocean, but is a temporary formation of the ocean itself, Every perceived thing is a formation of the one divine substance, which is conscious being. This is why the search for security in the world of form is a perpetual disappointment. You are seeking permanence in the ever-changing expressions of the one substance, rather than abiding as the substance itself. The wave, seeking to secure itself, will only find anxiety in the shifting waters. Its peace is found in the realization that it is the ocean, limitless and deep. Let this sink into the practical moments of your day. You sit down to pay your bills, and a feeling of lack and constriction arises. The old consciousness, the unawakened mind, perceives this as a real problem in a real world. It sees the numbers on the page as solid facts and the bank account as a finite, external resource. It feels itself to be a small, separate entity facing a powerful, material system. But the awakened perspective, through spiritual discernment, sees something else entirely. It sees that the numbers, the paper, the very concept of money, are all appearances within consciousness. The feeling of lack is not a response to an external reality, but a ripple within the mind, a specific texture of thought and sensation appearing in the aware space that you are. The power and reality you have given to this drama of lack is borrowed. It is a power loaned from the only true source, which is your own aware presence. When you rest as that presence, the drama may continue to play on the screen, but you are no longer the anxious character in it. You are the silent, boundless screen itself, upon which the entire production of wealth and poverty unfolds. This understanding transforms your relationship with the body. A pain arises. The unawakened mind immediately personalizes it, claims it as my pain, and projects a future of suffering, weaving a story of decline and mortality. It sees the body as a solid, separate object that is under threat. But what is the body truly? Close your eyes and feel your hand. What do you actually experience? You do not experience a solid, static object called hand. You experience a cluster of sensations, tingling, warmth, pressure, aliveness. These sensations are not the hand itself. They are experiences appearing in your awareness. The entire body is a flowing, vibrating, sensory experience known to you. It is a pattern of intelligence, a living idea appearing within the field of consciousness. It is made of the substance of awareness, and it is known by that same awareness. You are not a body that has consciousness. You are consciousness that has temporarily taken on the form of a body. This realization does not deny the sensory experience, but it liberates you from identifying as the fragile, impermanent form. The pain may be present, but the terrified, suffering me that was once entangled with, it is seen to be as insubstantial as a ghost. This realization that you are the very consciousness in which all form appears naturally directs the journey inward. The frantic seeking in the external world for security, for validation, for peace, must now come to a complete and utter end. It is a fruitless search, for you have been seeking the substance in its expressions, the ocean in its waves. The entire spiritual impulse now turns from an outward gaze to an inward descent. not into the psychology of the personal self, but into the profound silence at the core of your being. This is the inner journey to the kingdom of God, a term that must be stripped of all religious superstition and understood for what it is, the realized state of your own divine consciousness, the direct apprehension of the one reality as your very own self. This kingdom is not a location to be reached, but a presence to be recognized. It is not a future reward for good behavior or correct belief. It is the eternal ground of your being, here and now, obscured only by the clamorous activity of the mind that believes in separation. Jesus stated, "The kingdom of God is within you." And this is the most practical, literal instruction ever given. It means that the peace you seek, the wholeness you crave, the authority you lack, is not something to be acquired, but something to be uncovered by a gentle, persistent turning of the attention away from the world of effects and into the heart of your own awareness. Consider a moment in your own life when you have felt a glimpse of this, perhaps without even naming it. It is that sudden, unexpected silence that falls between two thoughts. It is the breathtaking stillness that descends when you are completely absorbed in watching a sunset, and for a fleeting moment, the commentator in your head falls silent, and there is only the pure experience without a you separate from it. It is the profound peace that sometimes visits you upon first waking, before the mind has assembled its list of problems and identities for the day. These are not mere moments of relaxation. They are cracks in the facade of the personal self, through which the brilliant light of the kingdom shines through. They are not accidents. They are invitations. The journey is to learn how to consciously enter this space, to widen these cracks until the inner reality becomes the permanent dwelling place of your identity. This is done not by effort, but by a sacred subtraction. You begin to practice releasing your grip on the endless stream of thoughts. You sit in quietness, not to achieve a special state, but to simply be aware of being aware. You notice the sensation of the breath, not to control it, but to feel it as a movement within the vast, still field of your consciousness. You engage in your daily activities, but with a portion of your attention resting as the silent witness, the one who knows the activity without being lost in it. You are driving your car, and you feel the steering wheel in your hands. You see the road ahead, but you are also, simultaneously, aware of the aware space in which this entire event is unfolding. This is not a distraction. It is the beginning of living from the kingdom. As this practice deepens, the most profound reassignment of identity begins to occur. You start to see that every thought, every emotion, every sensory impression is a guest appearing in the hospitable space of your awareness. The thought, "I am afraid," comes and goes. The feeling of sadness arises and dissipates. The sense of being a body moves and changes. But the aware presence that knows all these coming and goings remains constant, unchanging, and utterly undisturbed. You are not the fearful guest. You are the hospitable space. You are not the lonely traveler. You are the destination itself. This inner kingdom is devoid of nothing, yet it is empty of all things that can be threatened. It is a fullness, a completeness, a silence that sings with the vibrancy of pure existence. It requires nothing from the world to be whole, for it is the very source from which the world arises. To journey here is to cease journeying and to simply, finally be. The culmination of this entire journey is the realization that you are not traveling toward a distant goal, but rather you are awakening to what has always and already been fully present. The kingdom of God, that state of perfect wholeness and fearlessness, is not a condition you are building through spiritual labor. It is the foundational reality of your own being, finished and complete from the beginning of time. Your entire spiritual practice, therefore, undergoes a radical reorientation. It is no longer a process of accumulation, of becoming better, holier, or more enlightened. It is the continuous, moment by moment adjustment of your perception to align with what is eternally true. You are already living from the finished kingdom. You are merely learning to recognize it. This is the final liberation from the tyranny of seeking. The mind, in its unawakened state, is a perpetual seeking mechanism. It seeks wealth tomorrow, peace in the next meditation, salvation in a future heaven. This seeking is the very engine of the sense of lack and separation. It reinforces the illusion that you are here, and the kingdom is there, and you must traverse time and space to reach it. But the truth that shatters this paradigm is that you cannot go to what you already are. The peace you seek is the very substance of the seeker. The wholeness you desire is the core of the one who feels incomplete. To live from the finished kingdom is to cease the frantic search and to rest as the very thing you thought you were looking for. Let this truth permeate the most ordinary moments of your life. You are sitting in traffic, and the old pattern of impatience and frustration begins to arise. The unawakened mind sees this as an obstacle to the peace it hopes to find later at home. It is living toward a peace that is not here now. But the awakened understanding does not seek to replace frustration with peace. Instead, it turns gently inward and recognizes the peace I am seeking is already here as the very awareness in which this frustration is appearing. You do not fight the frustration. You simply acknowledge the ever-present, undisturbed background of conscious peace that is your true nature. The frustration, no longer fed by the belief that it defines reality, loses its intensity and becomes a passing weather pattern in the vast, calm sky of your being. You are not moving toward peace. You are abiding as the peace that is already fully present. This applies to every aspect of human striving. You are working on a project, striving for success. The old consciousness lives toward the success, believing that fulfillment lies in its achievement. It is a state of perpetual becoming. But to live from the finished kingdom is to understand that the fulfillment you project onto the future achievement is actually a quality of your own conscious presence. Right now, the joy of creation, the clarity of intelligence, the very capacity to act. All these are expressions of the divine substance that you are. When you engage in the work from this standpoint, the compulsive anxiety about the outcome dissolves. You are free to act with excellence and purpose, not because you need the result to complete you, but as a natural expression of the wholeness that you already are. The action flows from fullness, not from lack. This is the great secret that turns the world from a place of trial into a place of manifestation. The world does not give you anything. It can only reflect back to you the reality from which you live. If you live from the consciousness of lack, the world will show you scarcity. If you live from the consciousness of fear, the world will show you threats. But when you dare to live from the finished kingdom, from the conscious recognition of your inherent wholeness, safety, and oneness with the divine source, the world begins to reorganize itself around that central fact. It is not that challenges cease, but they cease to have the power to define you. They are seen as they are temporary patterns in the infinite tapestry of consciousness, having no authority to disturb the king who reigns from the throne of his own silent, fearless heart. Your life ceases to be a process of building a sanctuary and becomes the continuous revelation that you have always been dwelling within it.